In the last year and a half, I lost 40 pounds. Here are some lessons I learned along the way. So first and foremost, the reason I'm red, I just came back for a run, super humid out, and I decided to run hills, which Denver is surprisingly really flat, so I just died. Still ran a sub 22 minute 5K though, not too bad. All right. First lesson, you don't have to eat less. So despite weighing almost 40 pounds less, I eat more now than I did 40 pounds ago. This does not mean that in order to get from 215 to 177, as you see on the screen, I did eat less to get there, but you don't have to eat less in totality. You do not have to continue to starve yourself. And so how did I go about this? How did I deny physics? Blah, blah, blah. Largely because I grew my hair out, but really because after cutting calories last year, so January 10th, 2024, I was super bulked up, gained a couple extra pounds. I also had gained some weight the summer prior, going out down the shore and being a knucklehead. I spent about, after January, I gained a couple more pounds, and I just looked in the mirror. I was like, I look like a fat piece of crap. I then spent 6 months cutting. So I cut from January 10th to about September, August of 2024. I then spent 6+ months building my maintenance. So I reversed out a little bit, made sure I wasn't gaining any weight, and ended up building my maintenance from 3,100 calories, which is around where I was maintaining my weight after the cut. Keep in mind, I'm 6 foot, 192 pounds at the time, give or take, to around 4,100 calories. In that time, I actually lost a few pounds and got down to 188. That is probably from increased activity, but I don't really think the increased activity was not nearly enough to compensate for the 1,000 calories increase that I was running. I have built up my running miles to about 20 miles a week, and I think that will play a part in as I get my calories higher and higher and higher. Well, actually, the 20 calories a week is really just recently. When I got built up to 4,100 calories, I was probably only running around maybe 10 miles a week. So I've gradually built that up. So, and that's like 1 or 2 days a week that I'm doing 5 to 10 mile runs at this point. So I don't really think that plays a difference. That would be about maybe an extra 500 calories a week burnt, maybe 1,000 calories a week, not 1,000 calories a day. I'm not walking anymore. There are periods where I was walking less. My activity level, again, has fluctuated, but it's not enough to compensate for an extra 1,000 calories a day. I'm not that crazy active, although I would like to be with snowboarding and all those things. But so I gradually increased my calories from 3,100 to 4,100. Doing this through first finding my maintenance, spent a few weeks after the cut, finding the amount I could eat and not gain any weight, and then slowly building that up, making sure my fat was in check. So I do that. The fat amount that I consume is your lean body mass or your body weight. You can choose whichever. If you are not very lean, I would definitely go with your lean body mass. If you're pretty lean, you can definitely get by with your body weight. Divided by 2.2 to convert that into kilograms, and then multiply by 0.8. So currently, at my current body weight, which is around 177, I'm eating 64 grams of fat daily. And I literally just got back to that after I'm reversing out this time. I then scaled my carbs by about 50 calories a week. Again, I had a really successful reverse. I started losing weight throughout it. And I started increasing at almost 100 calories a week. I don't necessarily recommend doing that when I work with clients. I very rarely do that. I keep it to 50 calories for men and about 24 calories for women. 24 because that's kind of how carbs line up, because carbs are 4 calories per gram. And that's really what you're increasing. Eventually you do increase protein, but that's talk for another day. We'll have Kathleen to talk about that. And I was just able to bump week after week, slowly adding more and more carbs, a lot from starches, a lot from fruit as well, juice, getting enough protein, and kind of keeping it from there. I did end up, after I lost a few pounds, gain a few pounds from January to about April through ski season, was traveling a lot, wasn't tracking my calories as religiously, and I ended up back at around 198. So still down about 17 pounds almost a year later. April, with the Transform woman, decided to do a cut again. So this is my second cut in 2 years. which is probably about an ideal timeline if you are going to do multiple cuts, and ended up losing approximately 20 pounds from 197 to 177. So this brings me to the next point. Cutting is the easy part, if you're willing to put in the work, at least. So I don't think many people have issues cutting. It does stink. It doesn't look like normal life. It's not fun, but people can deal with suffering pretty well. Like, I've put a good amount of people through the cut, and they know that this is temporary, which makes it easy to make good food choices. Watching the scale go down is motivating. Working towards a goal is inspiring. People do really well when they're working towards a goal. I see this with a lot of my friends. They set goals for marathons, half marathons, and they were all running for the most part. And it was really awesome to see them working out consistently. And then as soon as the half marathon stopped, they all basically, I don't want to say quit, but the amount of working out they were doing took an exponential decrease or a drop off. If humans do really well when they're working towards a goal, we all do really well when they're working towards a goal. So what I recommend for people in that is always be working towards a goal, be that whatever that is. Maintenance is hard because, again, there's no obvious goal. You kind of have to make one. And because maintenance is life, it's not sexy. There's no scale to watch go down. There's little inspiration to make the healthy choice. And as a result, most people fail. Now, I'm telling you from experience here, I gained 5 pounds in that maintenance period. Or actually, really more like almost 10 pounds in that from January to April. Not intentionally, wasn't trying to, was trying to master maintenance, and I got too lax. Over the holidays, I kind of just went to town eating some food. And I gained a few pounds there. When I went to, not Jackson Hole, Telluride with my dad for my birthday to ski, definitely ate too much food there. Gained some pounds, had a bunch of people visit me, definitely made some not so great food choices. Didn't track all week. And when you go from having a huge amount of accountability with tracking, a lot of people really struggle when they don't track at all. So that's a thing I'm working on. I'm working on the build skill of maintenance as well. But maintenance is the hard part. It's really hard to keep that weight off, especially if you don't have a solid foundation. So the weight won't stay off if you haven't established a solid foundation prior to losing it. And a couple things that I think are part of this: you need to be maintaining or getting in 6,000 to 8,000 steps daily. I would keep that within 1,000 range. It's very easy for people to get 8,000 in the summer, and then people drop off to like 4 or even less. I've been home the last few weeks, and I've literally watched as my watch has said you're getting like 500 steps because I don't go for a walk in the morning. I'm usually in a pretty good routine of going for a walk in the morning. I go to the gym midday or something, go for a run or go for a walk if I'm not doing anything, and then go for a walk before or after dinner. It's pretty easy for me, but being at home, I've just been kind of lazy. I was supposed to be on vacation. Didn't happen. But it's been a lot harder for me to get 8,000 steps. So I've actually had to work towards it, which is nice to kind of be refreshed. It's like, this does take some work to get 8,000 steps. I don't think you need to get 8,000 steps if you want to. That's kind of where the health benefits tap out at in terms of like getting more steps. But you can definitely maintain at 6,000, probably even less. But you just need to make sure that your activity level goes down very slowly, like 1,000 steps a week as you go into the winter and into your hibernation. If you go from 10,000 to it starts snowing out, you get 4,000 steps all week, you're probably going to start gaining weight, especially if you do not decrease your calories proportionally to match that decrease in activity level. So activity level does matter too. Part of the increasing maintenance or metabolism is your basal metabolic rate, which is like the amount of reactions that are happening in your body. This is the amount of calories that you burn if you don't move an inch all day. It's all of the enzymes firing. It's your hair, your skin, your nails, not even including your digestion, technically, depending on who you ask. Your heart rate, your liver doing all of its things, your stomach replenishing itself through like all of the lining of the stomach, all of the little things that happen to keep you alive. When I'm talking about that 1,000 calories, that's what I'm referring to. Okay, so one of the big things I learned this year and a half is you have less muscle than you think. So I vividly remember, maybe he'll get sent this or listen to this, but my old boss told me at one point, and I was at 220 at the time, or cutting from 220, and we were talking about cutting, and I was so fat. Like, I thought I had put on a lot of muscle, and I'll tell you about my plans after this in the future, but before putting on muscle, but I was fat. I was fatter than these pictures you saw before. And he told me, he's like, you would have to get to 175 to be shredded. And I was like, go fuck yourself, dude. You have no idea what you're talking about. I know way more about fitness than you do. And I did. I would argue. And I was so clearly wrong. And I wish I would have had the humility to take his advice and realize how fat I actually was. Maybe do a body fat percentage test. That would have given me a good idea. Or like use Menno Hensman's FFMI index. I'll link that below. It's really good if you need to see how much muscle you have, or really useful to see if you have more muscle gain, which we all do. But despite looking the most ripped I ever had, I am the smallest I've been literally in years because I have no fat covering my arms. And for whatever reason, I don't have much fat anywhere at this point, but I don't hold any fat in my arms. So they kind of always are a weak point for me. But in general, like it was really depressing, honestly, during this cut, getting between, there's this weird purgatory, which is one of the next pieces of advice, where you no longer are filling out your t-shirts, which feels kind of good as a dude to fill out your t-shirt. I know it doesn't necessarily feel as good for women sometimes. So maybe also for your pants for women, you feel like your butt is popping or whatever that is, and you're proud of that. So there's this weird purgatory, this weird interim where you don't fill out your clothes anymore. You don't look ripped yet, and that sucks. Like, you just feel small. You look kind of small. You don't really look very good. And that was probably from around 192 for me to, I'd say below 180 until I started feeling shredded. I just felt really small and was like, this sucks. I can't believe how little muscle I have after all of these years. Luckily, the nice part is that after the cut, you do start to fill back up a little bit. So you do look smaller at the end of the cut than you do after the cut, just because I think your muscles are able to kind of you probably lose a little bit of muscle during the cut, but also which you hopefully regain pretty quickly thereafter. But also I don't think you're fully pumped up. Like you see bodybuilders on stage, they replete, they get a lot of carbs and send them to their muscles, do a lot of salt retention and things like that the last few days before they step on stage. But yeah, so literally my boss told me 175 would be what I needed to get ripped. And he couldn't have been more spot on. And I was so pissed that he said that. And it's really crazy how much less muscle you have than you think. A lot of people are afraid to gain muscle. They're afraid to get bulky, women especially. And I was just at my cousin's wedding. My sister and a lot of other people were like, my cousin's like a really good CrossFit athlete, or pretty solid CrossFit athlete. She's not winning any Olympic medals. She's no Ryan Fish, but she's pretty darn good. She's pretty ripped. And it was like, I would love to have her back. I would love to have her arms. Her shoulders are awesome. And she has spent 10 years, I think, cutting and bulking to get there. Probably more than 10 years. She's definitely been lifting for as long as I have. She's a few years older than me. So you have nothing to worry about with getting ripped. And muscle is so small and so dense, as you've seen that famous picture of fat versus muscle, that you can gain a pound of muscle and you will look smaller because it's just so much denser than fat. So if you want to be smaller, I say this all the time, muscle creates shape, fat creates bulk, muscle and fat create size. So if you want to be smaller, you can either lose fat or you can replace fat with muscle. Both will result in you getting smaller. If you want to be more shaped, you just need more muscle. If you want to be less bulked, you need less fat. Most people want a combination of all three of those or both of those, however many permutations I just labeled. Okay, next lesson. So the smaller you get, the bigger you look. So it's really counterintuitive, but like this is the smallest I've been in a long time, and I look like kind of pretty crazy shredded. What's interesting though is you see me right now, like this t-shirt is not my favorite at all. Just random thing I threw on. Clearly didn't get very dressed for this. I just wanted to do it. Was motivated, but don't rely on motivation for anything. Tangent. I am not very big with a shirt on. I don't think I'm big. Most by objective standards, at least in my world, I'm not big. I would like to add at least 1 to 2 inches to my arms, and that's my plan over the next few years, and a lot to the rest of my body. But I take my shirt off and I look pretty darn good at this point. I'm pretty happy with how I look at this point, which is great. I have never really been happy with how I look. But it's interesting, and I kind of like the idea of like a sleeper physique where it's like you can't tell that I lift. Like even if I was really filling out this shirt to the point where my arms were super tight in it, which I was at one point because I was fatter, I wouldn't wear it. I really like the idea of oversized t-shirts. I kind of like not looking or dressing like everything is super tight and that I lift. I prefer loose fitting clothes. So I like the sleeper physique. I think it's kind of cool that I've been to going to gymnastics, and for whatever reason, it's really acceptable for all the dudes to not wear a shirt. And I look probably on par with a lot of them. Everyone there is pretty ripped, but I've never taken off my shirt because it's just not my thing. I don't really need to do it. You kind of get a lot of eyes drawn to you when you look really decent shirtless, and I don't necessarily need that attention. I kind of would prefer to not have that kind of, at least in some part, I hope, do this for myself and to compete with myself. But yeah, so it's very counterintuitive. Like, you're just going to get smaller and smaller. Eventually you do get bigger. One cool part is you do look kind of weirdly and kind of grossly vascular. At least I'm not at bodybuilding lean. Maybe I'll get there one day. Maybe I'll try and step on a stage. Not really on the goal list at this point. But also the amount of time it took me to recover from my cut this time it took me like 4 weeks. I'm still not at 100%. And this is after 6 weeks of cutting pretty intensely. I think part of that is because of how low, I think I'm sub 10% body fat. So it's a little bit more stressful than it's been in the past. But I'm really going to spend these next, hopefully, like 3 to 4 years bulking and then do another cut. I really don't want to keep doing this to myself. I've done lots of cuts and bulks. I've lost over the years hundreds of pounds easily. Again, I got up to 220 at one point. I used to do a cut and a bulk literally every year. I've lost a lot of weight in the past. So, and it's never been this stressful. Could that be because I'm older? Could that be because I've never gotten this lean? I don't know. You make the decision. Could it be because I did a more intense cut? Very possibly. And also very possibly that I just didn't notice the symptoms because I did it over such a longer period of time that they set in more gradually. But the last few days of this cut, my sister was graduating from PT school and I was so miserable. I don't think I've ever been that miserable where day after day, the only thing I'm thinking about the entire time is food. Was grumpy the whole time. No one told me. My mom asked me at the end of it, she was like, have you been having fun? I was like, no, I'm so miserable. She was like, oh, I couldn't tell. I was like, oh, that's good at least. So at least I kept it within, but it was not fun getting this lean. Definitely don't. Not that I don't recommend it. I would definitely do it again. And I'm glad I did it. But I also see in some of these pictures that I'm looking at, like, I still have fat to lose. I still have some obliques, some fat around my obliques, which I'm going to work on. Not trying to lose fat there. I'm going to actually try and train them and gain some muscle there because I think that will really help. Counterintuitive to a lot of what other people say, but again, muscle is so much denser. And if I have more muscle for the fat to shape, or even the skin at this point, because I have a little bit of loose skin there, to grab around my physique, go around my butt, it will stretch, I hope, into the right places rather than forming new skin. I mean, skin is pretty stretchy. So I'm hoping over time I lose a little bit of skin, just maybe hope some of it eats itself. We'll see if that happens. I don't really think that happens at a very fast rate. I think it happens at a very, very slow rate, if at all. But kind of filling out the areas that I want to with muscle and then just trying to build a lot of muscle. Okay, so it's all an illusion. This really has been irking me lately because if I only posted pictures of me like in peak lighting with a pump, there's some pictures on my Instagram of me in a car window, and it actually looks absurd. And I texted my friend who's in a similar sphere as us, like loves to bodybuild, not professionally or not trying to step on stage, but just wants to look good, likes to build muscle. And it's literally an illusion. Like, it's not real. I look like that for a fraction of my life, like a few minutes every day or every week in peak lighting. But people will own, like, a lot of influencers that I follow and respect, some of them, not for this, but only post pictures of themselves in peak lighting after a pump, flexed, blah, 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 with like a shirt that fits really, really well, like on their muscles, with a shirt that fits. And that just really bothers me that it creates such an inaccurate picture of how they actually look. Because again, I'm 6 foot, around 177 right now, and I'm not the most muscular. I'm not the biggest guy by far. A lot of people have much better physiques than me, but a lot of the people you see that are natural, or at least allegedly, and look ripped all the time are like 5'6", 5'5", and below, which is there's nothing wrong there. So they proportionally just look a lot bigger, but they're also just not big. Like, if you were to see them in person, you were to see them with a t-shirt like this on, they look like normal human beings. And you almost can't tell they lift, which again is fine. It's not to discredit them, but it creates a very, for me, a negative perception. Or I think it's kind of like this, everyone's on steroids these days. And I would like to show myself when I don't look at my peak, because it's useful to know what most people can look like. Again, to a lot of my friends and colleagues who don't look like me, like they would love to look like me. Obviously, I want to look like the people that are on steroids. You shoot for the people you surround yourself with. My Instagram feed is a bunch of people that make me look like crap, and that's perfectly fine. I'm going to keep striving. That's great. But a lot of people have these expectations that they're going to look like 16-inch arms with a six-pack shredded, and that is not going to happen for most people. This guy commented on my Instagram, Benny, I don't know how big his arms, but this guy has an insane physique. He's probably 5'10". He might be a little shorter than that, but absolutely insane physique, way bigger than me, and he looks awesome, but he's a lot shorter than me. So I might have just as much muscle as him, but his arms are condensed a lot shorter, so he looks a lot bigger. His appearance appears a lot bigger because it is all an illusion. Bodybuilding is largely an illusion. Some of the people like C-Bum on stage are 6 foot, but a lot of the people that step on the bodybuilding stage are 5'6", 5'7", 5'8", and they look huge because they're not very big lengthwise, height-wise. You're not ugly, you're fat. I heard Hermosi say this the other day, and I said it before in a more mean way. There's so many people that are just not that attractive because they don't have any definition in their jaw. Like, people are always looking for hacks. Like, yeah, sure, chew some masticum, do some facial lymphatic exercises. I think all that's great. But what works really well is getting to a relatively lean point. I don't really think there was probably any difference between 10% body fat and, like, let's say 12 or 13. I mean, there's some difference in my face, but at 215, I looked so bad. Even doing this podcast, I'll post the side by side up here, but it's crazy how much more attractive and confident I feel about myself just as a result of getting lean. And I think most people, if you are worried about ugly, which at one point I was convinced that I was ugly, just try to get relatively lean, maybe build some muscle first, which we've talked about in the last podcast, but get relatively lean. You'll look a lot better if you're worried about your appearance. Also, to anyone that says that you shouldn't pursue vanity goals, that's such a load of bullshit, because the opposite of wanting to lose weight is wanting to gain weight. And let's not talk about muscle. The opposite of wanting to lose fat is wanting to gain fat. And no one would ever advise that. So why is it then a bad goal to want to lose fat to look better? Why is it a better goal to want to lose fat to look better for your significant other? Why is it a bad goal to want to lose fat to attract a better mate? I don't want to. I want to date someone that's fit, that likes to exercise, that likes to do all these things. So Jordan Peterson, a lot of people talk about, or him, and a lot of other people talk about this, like, you need to become the person that you want to attract, or become worthy of the person that you want to attract. And I want someone that's willing to kind of do the hard things in life, do the things that are worthwhile. And I think most of the things that are worthwhile in life are hard. Again, don't fall into the natty purgatory. I'll touch on this because it's such a painful interim that I never had passed through before. And I remember having this conversation in college where this guy came into the gym and he had a great physique before. And he came in, he was shredded. And I think he probably lost a decent amount of muscle because he looked like he lost probably 30 pounds. Maybe that was just the cost it took to get ripped. And we were talking about this, like, dude, it just sucks being natural, because either you look great in a shirt or you look great without a shirt. And there's no in between. I'm pretty comfortable with how I look now. So I wouldn't agree with our former take, but there is this gap between, again, when you fill out your shirt and when you aren't ripped yet, and that kind of sucks. So if you're there, push through. But if you're me 5 years ago, I also don't know if you'll ever look good with your shirt or look great with your shirt on. You're just going to kind of be really skinny. Maybe not 5 years ago, but 10 years ago, 12 years ago, there's pictures of me shirtless, and I was ripped in high school, but I was just so skinny that I had no muscle. So also don't fall into the trap of being perpetually skinny fat and thinking you can also just not gain weight or not eat enough and still gain muscle, because that is the trap that I fell into for quite a long time. Okay, you can't do it all, but you can do a lot. So despite weighing 50 pounds more, I graduated high school at 165, which is only about 12 pounds heavier now. But I came into high school around 120 pounds, and I'm hoping to run a 5K in sub 19. Hopefully, I'm actually aiming for sub 18. I don't know if that will happen this year, but I'm hoping to be faster than I ever ran in high school. And I know for a fact I can jump higher than I ever did in high school. So for a long time, I didn't understand. There wasn't a lot of good people, or at least that I knew of. I guess they were there, but they weren't as well known, talking about athleticism development. I just did a whole course with Matt Watson, who's the man. Highly recommend that course. It was a lot of fun. Matt's the boy. He left me a nice note over there, which I'm going to do something with because it was super cool. And I did the programming for a time with Max Marjo, who graduated from Princeton, a really bright guy, really cool dude, kind of funny on Instagram. He has great programming. You can concurrently train both for cardio and for athleticism. And athleticism does not take a lot to train for. Like 15 minutes before your workouts will get you nice and warm and ready to work out. You can also tie it in directly with your lifting with some intelligent supersets. You can do it on its own day. Everyone, in my opinion, should be doing some kind of plyometrics, at least in the deep tier, probably doing some other things as far as sprinting and actually trying to jump where you have impact. I've been thinking about this a lot because you hear a lot of people with running talk about you should run on soft surfaces because it's better on your joints or easier on your joints. That is true, but you also want your joints to be able to tolerate a lot of force. Like one of the things that happens as we age. I'll give a better example. This woman came into the gymnastics class, and I still stink at gymnastics. I'm getting better rapidly, but I still stink compared to literally everyone else that's in the class. And this woman came, and obviously she used to rip gymnastics, not any Olympian or college athlete probably, but used to be able to hold her own, I'm sure. And the coaches were just saying, be cautious. Please go slow. You shouldn't try to do what you were able to do at your peak today. And one of the things I was thinking about is mentally, she still has it. You know, she still has the ability to shoot a basketball or blah, 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 whatever the equivalent is in gymnastics. Like she can still rip a 3-pointer, still not missing free throws, even though she hasn't done it in years. Mentally, she still has all that skill. But it took years of developing cartilage and the tissue necessary to withstand that impact, withstand that rotational force. And I don't think it probably takes much to maintain it, but I bet you do lose a decent amount of it faster than you would think. Like people do lose bone density. People do lose the ability to create that torque, that rotational stiffness in their joints, which is why I think when people go back to playing basketball, which is a good example for me because I used to play, but go back to a sport, they're so likely to injure themselves in that first few minutes. And Keith Barr has been talking about this a lot. He talks about tendons. It's like after you warm up and a few minutes into it, it's not the first plant you do, but it's after your strongest tendons have kind of fatigued. And then that gives leeway to your weaker parts of the tendon. And then they just give out and you tear something. So you do need to be doing these things constantly. That's why we've integrated plyometrics and cardio into the programs for all of our athletes, because we want everyone to be a well-rounded person. And also muscle growth takes so freaking long in general, in total. So you may as well do a little bit to maintain your muscle. And I really don't think, to retain your cardiovascular health, to retain your athleticism, to retain your joints, that doesn't interfere with your muscle growth. Whether or not muscle growth is the main thing you're prioritizing, I would prioritize it for anyone because it takes so long. But you can just have these like 2 days a week, do a 10-minute warm up, or maybe 3 times a week, do a 10-minute warm up, do some plyometrics, warm up, cool down with them too. You can, or whatever you want, however you want to fit it in. And you can maintain all of those tissue properties pretty much. And the last thing is you'll get there, King. So I've been lifting for 12 years, since freshman year, even really before that, since freshman year, going into freshman year of high school. My lifting program is horrible. I was not eating enough. I overtrained for the first time. Then I got super depressed. But like, this is the first time I'm like, I think I look good. I'm pretty confident with how I look. And I still think I have a long way to go. I'm super excited to spend these next 4 years bulking. But it's nice to have the maturity that I have I'm super mature now to say, okay, I'm in the past, literally 2 or 3 years ago, I remember going to senior year of college and saying, okay, this is the last bulk I'm going to do because I know I'm going to be huge. I know everything now. I know everything you need to know. I optimize muscle growth, blah, 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 doing all of the crazy optimal stuff. And while I continue to think every time this all the time, and I continue to be humbled and be like, okay, you actually don't know that much, which is great. I think I know enough about lifting, but I always think there's more stuff to know. I also think at this point, the optimal doesn't really get you that much further than the average workout. There's some stuff that's really bad, but Kathleen and I have been talking about recently how you can probably hit, for example, if I do like 4 sets of bicep curls, I'm probably better off doing a few sets of different types of bicep curls that overload your bicep in a different position from a different angle. So I hit different heads of the joint to maximally or more fatigue certain fibers instead of just doing the same part over and over again. The caveat here is you don't want to be redundant, which I think is one of the keys in really bad workouts. So you don't want to go from a bicep curl with dumbbells to a barbell to a cable curl because they all are doing the exact same thing. But maybe you do a pronated curl to get more of your forearm or in brachialis, and then you go do a lengthened bicep curl that's externally rotated. So like thumb out to hit more of the long head. And then you go do an internally rotated with a shortened focus. You're getting more of a pump, more metabolites, but also hitting more of the inner head of the biceps, the short head. So now you're hitting all 3 heads a little bit more, and you might get slightly more biceps because if you had just done one of those variations, you wouldn't have maximally fatigued all of the heads. But again, you don't want to do a bunch of exercises that are exactly the same that have different names, which a lot of people fall into the trap, especially with glutes and abs, where they're just doing like 30 ab exercises that are all the same. They're not actually overloading them. They're not doing anything. They're just, and look, you can still grow some abs that way. It's just probably not the most efficient way to do so. I'd much rather you do 1 set of something really hard twice a week and then continue to try to progress. I've gotten back into, and it's been super fun too. Like one of my insights recently is like, you definitely can overtrain. I'm someone that does that. I also have a lot of time that I dedicate towards lifting, and I run my own company, so I can work out training, I should say, because I've been running a decent amount too, but I work out whenever I want. I just worked out in the middle of the day and that's great, but make sure you are taking into account your recovery. Lifting for me doesn't really seem to take a huge toll on my recovery, but if I'm doing lifting cardio the same day, like that kills me. Sprints take up a decent amount of recovery, much more so than other types of things. Plyos take up a decent amount of recovery, and they definitely take a lot of stress or put a lot of stress in the joints, which takes time to recover from. They don't recover from as fast. So I've been dealing between plyos and running, again, shin splints essentially for the last 2 years, slowly but surely getting better. And I'm learning more. I actually started phasing back in seated calf raises. And it's actually insane how I hadn't been doing them because you don't necessarily need to train your soleus directly, which is the calf muscle that's most active in the seated calf raises for standing. Standing, you get more gastroc and soleus. But it's actually insane how much that seems to help my tendonitis or my Achilles tendonitis or possibly my shin splints. Don't really know what's been bothering me down there, but it does wonders for it. And I'm like, wow, I can't believe just because it's not optimal for hypertrophy, I had been ignoring this when it seems to do wonders for my orthopedic health, my limbs and joint health. So again, always be learning. Keep doing things in the meantime that you love. Like, don't give up your sports. Don't give up basketball, lacrosse, whatever it is, to go all in on bodybuilding if you're not going to do it. I do believe concurrent training, so there's a little bit of cardio and or athleticism, can actually really benefit your physique building, also keep you entertained, give you more goals to shoot for, and keep you lifting. At the end of the day, this is a war of attrition. Whoever doesn't stop is going to win, almost always. Actually, always, because no one wins by stopping. You essentially lose it all at some point anyway, regardless, because you can't really gain infinite amounts of muscle mass. It gets smaller and smaller, but I'm super excited for what's to come. I'm going to spend the next 6 months, or I'm going to spend the next few months trying to get back to around 4,000 calories a day. And that will hopefully take me just a month and a half, probably till like August. And then I'm going to spend the next 4 years trying to gain about a half pound of muscle a month. So trying to really, really slowly bulk, trying to maximize muscle growth, minimize fat gain, which I am happy that I'm mature enough to realize how slow muscle growth is. I might even still gain some fat at that very, very slow rate of weight gain, but hopefully it'll be so minimal that I'll do one cut 2 years, 4 years from now, 3, 4 years, 2, 3, 4 years, see how the bulk goes. And I'll be, again, in the best shape I've ever been in. Maybe I won't even need to do a cut if it goes really, really well. I kind of doubt it. I'm sure I'm going to mess up some weekends. I'm going to mess up some holidays. But I'm excited to do this partially because I think bulking should look more like life and maintenance. A lot of people go from cutting to bulking. They don't do any kind of reverse and they just start gaining weight. Look, one time a few years ago, 2022 after I graduated college, I went home, was done with the cut, was like, let's go. I look pretty good. It's crazy how much less cut I was back then than I am now, but I digress. And then I just started gaining weight, probably 2 to 3 pounds a month. And then you just get so fat, you don't really gain much muscle, and then you have to do another cut. And you spend all of this time cutting, a lot less time bulking, which means you're going to grow less muscle. You lose some muscle during the cut. So you also are now at a net negative in terms of muscle growth on the year. Not necessarily net negative, but you're further back from where you could have been. Instead of just trying to slowly work out more gains, trying some new programs, higher volume, lower volume, the longer you lift, the better. I'm also going to really focus on trying to improve my health. What's really been nice, and I don't necessarily recommend everyone wear one of these or wear it all the time, but I've gotten a wearable for running. I thought I was only going to wear it for running, but I actually really like wearing a watch. I've wanted to be a watch guy for a long time, and now I kind of have a reason to always wear one. And I don't think it looks like a big bulky watch, like an Apple Watch or anything. I kind of, again, like it being more low key, looking more like a watch. But I tried killing myself basically the last 2 weeks because I was supposed to leave for a trip on Monday. So I wanted to get all of my cardio in. I have a running goal for the year and to hit enough miles or hit a given amount of miles. And I wanted to basically double the amount of workouts in. So I would, because I knew I wasn't going to be training for 10 days. And it's actually crazy. I'm still fatigued from that. And it's been 5 days of much more relaxed workouts and things, 6 days really. So it's been nice as someone that tends to push themselves as much as they can, to have some feedback where it's like, oh yeah, you feel like crap, but you also have some HRV, some actual objective data that's like, yeah, you're also killing yourself. I watched my HRV just tank a little bit day by day, and it's slowly getting back up. Today's the first day where the average has been somewhat high again, but it took almost a week of recovery, and I still didn't feel great today. And part of that is also coming out of the cut, not having as much energy. Maybe if I had done the same thing a month from now where my maintenance is much higher, I would have been fine. But you never know. Let's see, is there anything else I want to cover? And also, if you want to chase goals, I think everyone should do bodyweight training at some point. Kind of going on some tangents here, but I'm chasing some other goals too. I want to do some gymnastics training, get back into muscle ups, work on a planche, work on a front and back lever. I'm not going to be chasing these vehemently because I think it's just something I'm going to do a little bit, hopefully once a week, not too intense of a workout, just to practice these. I no longer think I'm going to get to a point where I'm just strong enough to be able to do these. I thought I would get lean and strong and then be able to rip a front lever. Maybe that is the case. I haven't gotten there, but I think by continuing to practice a lot of these things, just a little bit, having that dose where I don't digress, I continue to progress over time, continue to learn those skills. I think a lot of these are skill-based. I'll be able to do a lot of cool party tricks eventually, which will be fun. Not that I'm going to be breaking these out at any parties, but I think they're fun things to be able to do and control your body in ways. And what I've seemed to have learned in life is that you learn a lot from learning other things, and a lot of things have slight crossover to a lot of other areas. Even with baking recently, I've been getting more and more into baking sourdough. And it's super funny because I'm trying to decipher what is the BS that everyone spouts that they think is true and what actually works when it comes to baking better bread. And it's funny because I have a lot of these parallels with the fitness industry where it's like someone's about, oh, high volume this or this exercise stinks, blah, blah, blah. And now I'm like, basically the same thing happens in every industry across the globe. So you've got to really try and extract the principles to work through these things and figure out what actually works and what works sometimes, and then figure out what is the reason it works sometimes. And then you can work from first principles, hopefully, which I'm not still sure I understand that word or I'm using it correctly. I think I'm using it correctly, but I don't understand the whole thing, what that means. Like, really, I'm not great at working from first principles, I guess I should say, but working on that, really trying to have a bunch of different hobbies, not all physical ones. Starting to get back into mountain biking, starting to want to keep getting better at snowboarding, continue progressing and running. So it's been a lot of fun to have multiple goals instead of situate my whole life just for muscle growth when basically I can't really get my body to gain muscle at any faster rate regardless. Maybe I could be in the gym an extra 2 days a week or 3 days a week, 7 days or 2 days, but the rate of increase muscle growth that I would see is so little that it's just not necessarily worth my time at this point, when I would rather spend that time doing other things that I find more fun. And I really encourage everyone, adults, kids, whoever is listening to this, my dad probably, maybe, to go do something that you suck at. It's been really fun. My friend from gymnastics who I met have been joking around that like everyone else is trying to break through a plateau and we haven't found ours yet, or found one yet. And a lot of people hate sucking at things, and I think it's such a fun thing to do. It's such a fun thing to suck because you have so much room for growth in such a short period of time before you really hit that first plateau where you start to level off your skill level and then need to work through it. And again, like, I'm playing a lot of these for long games. I'm going to be baking, hopefully, maybe for the rest of my life. The next thing I want to get into is espresso. And I'm going to be doing this the next thing in my life. So it's not a huge rush to become the best espresso maker, but it'll be really fun to get good at making espresso and drawing some things into the espresso. I think that'll be super cool. Get better at cooking. Like, it's a long game. And honestly, one of the cool perspectives that I've had recently is that it would kind of suck. I think this is similar to like the lottery phenomenon, where if like you knew you won the lottery, you'll never be richer than that day, essentially, or you'll never have a better day in your life. And that could be very depressing. It would kind of suck to be like, tomorrow someone would tell me, hey, you're never going to gain another ounce of muscle for the rest of your life. That would actually really suck because I would have nothing to work towards. I don't envy the day where I just realize that my body is in total decline. Something I've thought about a decent amount, try not to think about, but and hopefully you just have other goals to shoot for. Like, you have kids that you want to see and have spend time with, but it's cool that I'm like, okay, I think I look pretty good. I'm happy with how I look physically. And I have all these other goals, which are fun, but I'm also going to still keep working towards this, keep working towards looking better, getting stronger. I have strength goals for the first time in a while. I want to hit a 400, 4 or 5 deadlift for reps, eventually 500 pounds. I want to see if I can hit 1,000-pound total powerlifting. I haven't squatted literally ever, so I will have to squat literally starting with the bar and getting used to that. So I'm going to suck for a long time at a lot of things, but I'm going to keep chipping away and hopefully get better and have a lot of fun along the way. And I hope you all do the same. And I would recommend doing that. And maybe, document the journey, keep track of it. And that's about it. All right, guys, until next time, be good. I will talk to you all soon. Hopefully going to really make a concerted effort to start getting more guests on. As much as I've enjoyed these solo casts, and I hope you have too. The reason I started the podcast was to talk to a bunch of really smart people. So I'm going to make a concerted effort to start interviewing more guests. Kathleen is obviously welcome on whenever she wants. Hopefully she starts coming back on now that we're maybe a little bit less busy after the Transform Round 2 launch, but I don't think we'll be less busy for a while, honestly. And we want to start getting some guests on. Kathleen might come on and talk to some guests with me too, which would be really fun. But until next time, guys, be good.